Dead America. Tales of the First Month. The Truck Driver. By Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. Day 0, 5:17 a.m. 5 miles south of Lenoir, North Carolina. Alan kept one hand on the wheel of his big rig tanker truck while using the other to rub his eyes one by one. 10 straight hours behind the wheel had pushed him to his limit, but he was determined to continue pushing on towards home. A small smile crept across his face when he saw the mileage sign on the side of the highway. Lenoir was first up, but the mention of Blowing Rock only being 20 miles away was what triggered the joy. 30 more minutes, and I'm going to be pulling onto my street. 45 minutes from now, I'll be slipping into a hot shower, and 60 minutes from now, I'm going to be passing the hell out in my bed. Alan's eyes closed for a brief moment before he forcefully shook them back open. Don't go doing that now. You're too close to home to screw it up now. What would Mabel say if she had to drive down and pick your dumb ass up for running off the road? Alan let out a sigh when his mind fell to his wife of 25 years. Married straight out of high school, they had been inseparable ever since, outside of the occasional solo runs like the one he was wrapping up. He hated making the trips without his partner, but sometimes it was necessary. In this particular case, however, it was fortuitous. Amazing, Alan. You didn't even have to wreck to be a dumbass. Mabel is sick, so the only thing you're going to do in 30 minutes is waking her up. Alan glanced down at his watch, shaking his head at the early hour. His attention was soon pulled to a nearby billboard advertising Johnny's truck stop at the next exit. A little breakfast couldn't hurt while killing some time. A prolonged yawn interrupted his talk with himself. And a few cups of coffee, too. Hang out an hour, go ahead and grab a shower here. Maybe even pick a little breakfast up for Mabel. Yeah, that's the plan. Let's do it. Alan slowed down as the large truck stop appeared on the horizon, the neon sign acting like a beacon in the darkened night sky. Despite the relative remoteness of the location, the overnight parking lot appeared to be packed. Easily 25 trucks were sitting idle. Maybe there was a wreck on 40, or they're doing some construction down by Asheville. That's a lot of trucks for the middle of the week. Alan shook off the unexpected collection of trucks as he pulled into the parking lot. Even though there was a crowd, he managed to find an empty spot right in the middle. He got the truck settled between two others, glancing over at the cabs, seeing them dark inside. You fellas get some shut-eye for me, because it's going to be a while before I get to it. Alan hopped out of the truck, stretching and groaning as his muscles protested from the long hours of driving. The decades behind the wheel and dining almost exclusively at roadside restaurants had taken their toll on his body. His pot belly wasn't as noticeable as some of those his comrades sported, but it was a clear enough indication that he wasn't going to win a 40-yard dash against too many people. Alan began the slow walk towards the back entrance of the truck stop, about 30 yards from where he parked. He heard footsteps coming from the next aisle over, the hard-soled shoes causing a loud sound to reverberate against the trucks. He chuckled to himself, taking a guess at the source. Happy hunting, lot lizards. With this many trucks, it must be like Christmas for you. Alan continued laughing, amused by his own fifth-grade level wit. A few moments later, he threw open the door to the restaurant portion of the truck stop, the tiny bell piercing through the relative quiet. He scanned the tables, only spotting 2 people sitting at them. One man was face down beside his cup of coffee, as if he was taking a short nap while waiting on his food. The other man began shaking his head as soon as he made eye contact. I didn't expect to see you here, Alan, Eddie said. Eddie pulled himself up from his booth, standing patiently for his old friend to reach him. Despite having an extra decade of experience on Alan, Eddie was in considerably better shape. Man, they just let anybody in here, don't they? Alan chuckled as he extended his hand for a shake. The 2 friends smacked each other on the arms, reacting to seeing one another. Isn't this your neck of the woods? Eddie asked. Yeah, I'm up in Blowing Rock, about 20 miles up the road, Alan replied. So you're stopping here on your way out? Eddie asked. Just wrapping up, actually. Mabel is under the weather, so I figured I'd grab a bite and a shower so I don't wake her up too early. Before Eddie could respond, a younger, attractive waitress sauntered on by, her blonde hair draped over her shoulders, landing at the front of her work shirt that was conspicuously missing the top 3 buttons. She gave a wink as she spoke. Good to see you, Alan. If you want to have a seat, I'll be around with some coffee. And don't worry, sugar, I'll bring the pot so I can fill you up too. Both truckers mumbled their responses a bit, captivated by her aura. Thank you, Brooke, Eddie said. I'm just going to join my friend here if that's okay, Alan said. It's fine by me, sugar. I'll be right back, Brooke replied. Both men stared at her as she walked away, letting out defeated sighs as she turned and went into the kitchen. And I'm sure your little detour had nothing to do with getting to spend a little time with that pretty little thing, now did it? Eddie grinned. Come on, Eddie, you know I'm married, Alan replied. So am I, but I'm not dead. Why do you think I'm so far off 40? Eddie said with a wink. You and about 30 other rigs, Alan joked. Yeah, somebody put out the heads up that she was working tonight, Eddie added. Really? Alan asked. Yeah, of course they did. They also said there's some massive pileup in Asheville, so there wasn't any hurry. That's what I thought, Eddie. Are you telling me you wouldn't make a detour to watch her pour you a cup of coffee? Eddie asked with a grin. Alan looked back as she carried the coffee over to them. He let out a sigh before turning back to Eddie, who was grinning like a child who is getting away with something. Just be polite. This is where I gas up before trips, Alan said. Scout's honor, I'll be polite and look her in the eyes. And if she asks, I'll even help her find her missing shirt buttons, Eddie joked. Alan gave his friend a light kick underneath the table, prompting him to laugh as Brooke approached. She sat down the cup and began pouring from the full pot. So, are you heading back out already, Alan? Didn't you just go out last week? Brooke asked. I'm coming back from that one, actually. Mabel is under the weather, so I figured I'd grab a bite and a shower before heading home, Alan replied. Well, isn't that considerate of you? The showers are all clear, so you just let me know when you're ready, and I'll get a key, Brooke said. I appreciate that, Brooke. So do you know what you'd like? She asked. Yeah, just give me the pancake breakfast with scrambled eggs and toast, Alan said. Coming right up. Oh, and I'll need to get a ham and cheese omelet to go too, Alan added. I'll put that order in whenever you hit the showers, Brooke replied. You're the best, Brooke. The young waitress gave him a wink and a smile before heading back to the kitchen. She barely made it 2 steps before the bell began ringing and the cook yelled out. Order up for table 2, the cook called. I'm on it, Brooke replied. That's not the only thing she could be on, Eddie muttered. Jesus, Eddie, really? I mean, is everything okay at home? Alan asked, raising an eyebrow. Eddie let out a laugh, shaking his head as he grabbed his coffee cup. Yeah, things are great, getting closer to paying the house off and going to be settling into retirement here before too long. Just cracking a few jokes out here while I can, Eddie replied. Alan stared at his friend for a moment before letting out a laugh, sending them both into hysterics for a moment. Man, it is good to see you. It's been too long, Alan said. Ain't that the truth? Eddie agreed. Both men enjoyed their coffee for a moment before continuing. So where are you coming back from? Eddie asked. Had a run down to Houston, just stopping off at home before running it up to Boone tomorrow for delivery, Alan explained. Houston, tanker run? Eddie asked. Yep, tanker run, Alan replied. Eddie shook his head at the mention of it, as if bad memories suddenly flooded his mind. I hate those runs with a passion. I told my dispatch that if they tried to send me to pick up another tanker, I was going to head straight for the border, find a nice little coastal town, and sell it off by the gallon to fund my lifestyle, Eddie said with a chuckle. I'm not sure that would fund much of a lifestyle, Alan remarked. You know me, Alan. I'm a simple man. Give me some cold beer, a warm beach, and hot women in bikinis running around, and I'm happier than a pig in slop, Eddie said. Well, maybe that would fund your lifestyle such as it is, Alan replied. Both friends laughed for a moment before Eddie's eye focused on Brooke again. She had her hands full with 3 plates of food, walking it over to the back table. Alan glanced back as well, noticing that the man seated there hadn't moved from his face-down position since he entered. Heads up, buddy, I got your food coming in hot, Brooke said. She stood beside the table for several seconds, waiting for the man to move, but he never did. Come on, man, these things are hot, I need to set them down, she said, but still, he didn't respond. Another few seconds passed before she gave up and stepped over to the next table, dropping the plates onto the surface with a hard thud. She immediately began rubbing her arms, trying to numb the heated pain coming from them. Brooke turned and walked back towards the kitchen, making quick eye contact with the 2 truckers. She put up a single finger, asking them to wait a minute, prompting them both to nod that it was all right. "Hey, I need a hand out here. Somebody decided that it was nap time," she called. "She doesn't sound happy," Alan said. "You should have seen her earlier. A couple of lot lizards slithered in here asking for some cold medicine. They backtalked her when she said they were sold out. And oh boy, let me tell you, our girl there looked like she was ready to beat some wholesale ass," Eddie said with a grin. "Yeah, one time I was in here, somebody decided it would be a good idea to cop a feel. I was on the other side of the restaurant, but I swear I heard his wrist snap," Alan said. "But why do the heavy lifting yourself when you can bring in hired muscle?" Eddie said, nodding back towards the booth where Brooke stood, watching as the cook marched out from the back. The man was all business, his massive chest puffed out, flexing his arms as he approached. He wasn't facing the two truckers, but the sternness in his voice caused both of them to perk up. "All right, buddy, there ain't no sleeping in here, so you're either going to have to sit up or we're going to send you on your way," the cook said. The cook towered over the booth, staring down at the unconscious man. After several unresponsive seconds, the agitated cook reached down and grabbed him by the back of his shirt, yanking his head off the table. "I said you need to sit your ass up," the cook shouted. The cook recoiled once he saw the lifelessness in the man's eyes. A bit of crimson-colored drool tugged at the side of his mouth, dripping down onto his shirt. "Jesus Christ, man, are you okay?" the cook asked. The cook reached out, tapping him gently, but receiving nothing in response. He then snapped around, staring down at Brooke. "What the hell happened to this guy?" the cook demanded. "I don't know. He looked like he wasn't feeling well when he ordered," Brooke said. "And you didn't do anything?" the cook shot back. "What was I supposed to do? I'm not a nurse," Brooke replied. Eddie and Alan continued watching the scene play out, both of them focused on the cook, making sure his frustrations didn't boil over into something physical. As they watched, they noticed the unconscious man behind them beginning to stir back to life. "Hey, he's moving," Alan said. "I'm not talking to you," the cook snapped. "I don't care. Turn around, he's moving," Alan shouted. The cook finally caught on to what Alan was saying, spinning around to the end table. The sick man looked from side to side, as if he was looking through his eyes for the very first time. "Hey buddy, are you all right?" the cook asked. The sudden sound caused the man's head to snap to attention, staring directly at the cook with vacant eyes. He didn't speak, only letting out a terrifying moan as he scrambled to his feet. Chapter 2. The cook stared at the recently reanimated man as it scrambled up from the booth, flailing about as it struggled to get all of its limbs working together. A moment later, however, it was on its feet and rushing forward. The cook stood his ground, planting his feet firmly on the floor and yelling out in an authoritative manner. "You better sit your ass down before—" The burly cook was cut off as the zombified customer lunged forward, grabbing onto the cook's shirt to pull him in closer. A split second later, the two bodies collided violently, sending them tumbling back to the ground. Alan and Eddie broke away from their seats, running towards the confrontation as it escalated. They barely took 2 steps before the cook let out a pained scream as the creature clamped down on his shoulder with its mouth. "Oh my God!" Brooke recoiled in horror, taking a couple of steps back and jumping as Alan grabbed her by the arm. Eddie moved past the duo in a flash, raising his foot up and sending it forward as hard as he could. The sole of his boot connected with the top of the creature's head, snapping it back and doing little to deter it from its assault. The ghoul looked up at Eddie, letting out an excited moan as it homed in on a new target. "Oh shit!" Eddie braced himself for impact as the ghoul hopped to its feet and rushed him. As the creature got within striking distance, the trucker managed to take a step to the side while shoving the ghoul towards a nearby booth. The zombie's knee connected with the seat, sending it head first into the booth. It flailed about in an uncoordinated manner, struggling to turn itself around. Before it could get its bearings, Eddie lunged forward, leaping up and slamming his knee into the ghoul's back, pinning it to the bench. Despite putting his full weight into it, the creature forced him upwards as it pushed against the booth. Eddie looked back to the others, yelling out, "Are you enjoying the show?" Alan snapped out of it, immediately leaping to his friend's aid. "Oh damn, sorry, Eddie." Alan jumped up onto the other side of the booth, stepping onto the table and planting his boot into the back of the thrashing creature's neck, pinning it to the seat. "What the hell do we do now?" Alan asked. "Maybe we give him a minute to wear himself out?" Eddie suggested. "He's a pissed-off trucker, not a cranky 5-year-old who needs a nap," Alan shot back. "Well, what's your brilliant plan then?" Eddie retorted. Alan thought about it for a moment, looking around the restaurant for something that could help pacify the zombified trucker. Before he could figure anything out, his eye was drawn to movement just a few yards away. "What in the hell?" Alan watched in horror as the bitten cook began to stir again, completely unbothered by the massive chunk of flesh missing from his neck. Rather than move slowly like an injured victim should be moving, the reanimated corpse shot straight to its feet, looking around with hungry eyes. In a flash, it spotted Eddie, letting out a guttural moan before rushing the unsuspecting trucker. Alan allowed his instincts to take over, putting his foot onto the back of the booth and leaping through the air towards the creature. The sudden, unexpected movement by his friend caught Eddie by surprise, causing him to look back towards the rapidly approaching zombie. Alan landed awkwardly on the ground, his out-of-shape, aging body stumbling forward towards the threat. Despite his complete lack of agility, the trucker managed to collide with the sprinting zombie with enough force to send it flying off its feet. The creature's shoulder connected with a couple of chairs as it slid underneath the table, sending furniture clattering to the ground. Alan moved quickly, scrambling back to his feet and grabbing a chair before attacking the zombie with it. His first strike was a lunge, planting the tips of 2 of the chair's feet into the creature's face and chest. This was enough to send the ghoul snapping back to the ground, the back of its head cracking on the floor, stunning it for a brief second. Alan didn't hesitate, lifting the makeshift weapon up a bit before driving it back towards the zombie's head. He adjusted his aim so that the tip of the chair's foot pierced through the ghoul's eye. With his full weight on the chair, he drove it into the zombie's brain. The ghoul convulsed on the ground for a brief moment before falling lifeless. It took a moment for Alan to realize the threat had been neutralized, slowly pulling himself off, wanting to be absolutely sure the creature wasn't moving. "I think he's down," Alan said. "That's great," Eddie said. "Now you want to come do whatever the hell you just did to this one?" Alan snapped his head around, spotting Eddie continuing to struggle with the zombified trucker. He looked around for something sturdy that could be used as a weapon, not finding anything that fit the bill. "Brooke, I need something heavy," Alan shouted. Brooke thought for a moment before her face lit up. Before she spoke, her feet carried her towards the kitchen, calling back to the truckers as she went. "Give me a second." Alan rushed over to his friend, getting around to the other side of the booth and pressing down on the back of the creature's neck. The 2 of them glanced at each other, struggling to comprehend the moment. Eddie looked down at their zombified counterpart. "All right, buddy, this is your last chance," Eddie warned. "You need to calm down right now, or else my friend here is going to bring the pain." Both men looked down at the creature as it continued to thrash about, completely ignoring Eddie's threat. "What the hell is wrong with this asshole?" Eddie asked. "I don't think it's his fault. Something is very wrong here," Alan replied. Before Eddie could respond, Brooke rushed out of the kitchen carrying a meat tenderizing hammer. She held it out for Alan to grab. "Will this work?" Brooke asked. Alan quickly reached out and took the makeshift weapon, raising it above his head but pausing before striking. "Come on, man, just give me some sign that you understand me and I'll find another way," Alan pleaded. The zombie continued thrashing around unabated, responding with unintelligible moans. Alan gave his friend a defeated look as both of them realized what needed to be done. Alan raised the meat tenderizer high above his head before bringing it down with as much force as he could muster. The kitchen utensil cracked against the back of the zombie's skull, sending a sickening sound reverberating through the restaurant. With one more strike, the creature fell silent. Eddie stepped back off the corpse, steadying himself for a moment before turning to his counterpart. "Are you all right, Alan?" Eddie asked. "Yeah, I'm good. Neither of them got me," Alan replied. "No, I mean, are you good? You just killed 2 men, Eddie pressed. "I don't think they were men, at least not anymore," Alan answered. "What do you mean?" Brooke asked. "Look at your cook," Alan said. "He was dead, or at least dying just a couple minutes ago. He has more of his blood on the floor than he does in his body. but he was moving faster than he's moved in years. "So, what are you trying to say?" Eddie asked. "I'm saying I don't have the foggiest idea of what in the hell is going on," Alan admitted. "I just know I don't want to be here anymore." "Shouldn't we call the cops?" Brooke asked. Alan and Eddie glanced at each other, wanting to ignore the waitress and just hit the road. Before either man could speak up, the side door entrance bell rang out. The three of them turned around, fear gripping them as they tried to make out what had tripped the sensor. They couldn't see the door from their vantage point, but they could hear footsteps and some murmurings. A few seconds later, the bell rang out again, then again, which was followed by the sound of the door slamming against the back wall. Eddie began to open his mouth, but Alan shushed him quietly before a word could come out. He gently motioned for the two others to move towards the kitchen. The trio moved quietly, listening to the noise coming from just around the corner. The survivors got within a few steps of the swinging kitchen door as the first zombie came around the corner. The provocatively dressed woman was missing several chunks of flesh as blood covered her dress. It didn't take long for the creature to spot the trio, letting out an excited moan before sprinting in their direction. "We gotta move," Alan shouted. The zombies' screeching quickly drew the attention of the other zombies who joined the assault. Half a dozen ghouls sprinted towards the kitchen, forcing the survivors to pick up their pace. Eddie and Brooke plowed through the swinging door, continuing to race towards the back of the kitchen. Alan, however, stopped dead in his tracks, planting his feet on the ground and shoving his shoulder into the door. "What the hell are you doing?" Eddie shouted. "Holding them off," Alan grunted. A split second later, the first of the zombies collided with the other side of the door, causing Alan to strain under the pressure. Despite the superior numbers on the other side, the trucker managed to hold his ground. "I can't hold them long, so figure out what the hell we're doing," Alan yelled. Eddie turned around to Brooke, who was beginning to feel the pressure of the moment. She was clearly struggling to hold it together, forcing the older trucker to speak in a calming manner. "Okay, Brooke, we need a way out of here," Eddie said. Brooke wiped a tear away from her eye before nodding and composing herself. She looked around for a moment before pointing towards the cooler door. "We can go through there," she said. "We're not gonna last an hour inside the cooler, girl," Eddie replied. "We need to get outside." "It's a double-sided cooler," Brooke insisted. "The delivery door and dry storage is on the other side. We can get out that way." Eddie didn't take her word for it, stepping over to the door and throwing it open. Much to his relief, her description was right, spotting the other door at the far end of the cooler. "We got a way out," Eddie announced. "Great. Now we just need something to slow them down," Ellen said. Eddie looked around, motioning for Brooke to follow him over to a large metal table in the middle of the kitchen. "We're gonna slide this over, come on," Eddie ordered. Brooke nodded and got on the other side of the table, both of them straining to move the heavy kitchen island. As they got close, Alan ducked down while keeping pressure on the door. Once the table was in place, he climbed under it to get to the other side. The trio stood there for a moment, relieved that their blockade was holding firm. "Come on, let's get something to fight with and get the hell out of here." Chapter 3. Alan, Eddie, and Brooke stood in the walk-through freezer, shivering as the zombies on the kitchen side smacked their hands against the glass. Despite the frigid temperatures, none of them were eager to leave the enclosure. Alan inched his way up to the back door, glancing back at his comrades and giving them a nod before gently pushing it open a few inches. He didn't dare to stick his head out, instead opting to position his ear close to the crack, hoping to hear any signs of trouble. After what felt like an eternity, he let out a sigh and gently pulled the door shut again. "The good news is, I don't hear anything out there," Alan said. Eddie raised an eyebrow. "And what's the bad news?" "I'd bet my left nut that there's plenty of noise out in the parking lot." "Where the hell did all these people come from?" Brooke asked. "It doesn't matter. They're here and we have to deal with them," Alan replied. "So how do you want to do it?" Eddie asked. "Where are you parked?" "My rig is about halfway down the lot. You?" "About the same." "So are we carpooling or what?" Alan contemplated for a few moments before responding. "What are you hauling?" "Usual assortment of crap going to the supercenter." "Does that mean food?" Eddie shrugged his shoulder, shaking his head at the question. "Your guess is as good as mine." "Did they not give you a manifest?" Yeah, they did, and it's in the truck. I've made this run 100 times, and I can count on one hand the number of times I flipped through the load details. But what does it matter anyway? You know me, Eddie, always planning for the worst. Eddie thought about it for a moment before his friend's line of thinking dawned on him. Jesus, you're thinking about hunkering down, aren't you? Hunkering down? What are you talking about? Brooke asked. Our boy here doesn't think that whatever is happening to those people out there is isolated. A full-blown streak of panic shot across Brooke's face, prompting Alan to put his hands up in an attempt to calm her down. I'm probably wrong, Brooke. In fact, I usually am. But on the off chance that I'm right, Alan trailed off, allowing his friend to pick up where he left off. Then we'd be in a much better position to ride this mess out if we had a truckload of goods meant for the supercenter. Not to mention a tanker full of fuel. I know lots of houses with generators up in Blowing Rock that would love to get their hands on that if we're stranded for a while. So you want to go to Blowing Rock then? Eddie asked. Mabel is there and I have a small arsenal in my back room, so if we can get there, we should be able to hold our own until help arrives. It's not that easy though, Brooke said. How do you figure? Eddie asked. We still have to get through Lenore and people are going to be heading off to work and school before too long. Well, we can't stay here, so we're going to have to risk it. Let's get out to our trucks and head out then. Brooke, I want you to stay with Eddie. And Eddie, I want you to stay on my ass when we get out on the road. If the highway is blocked, I've been through town enough to get us a new path through. Copy that. I'll be on channel 10 if you need to reach out. Okay, are we ready? Both Eddie and Brooke raised their kitchen knives, showing that they were as ready for battle as they were ever going to be. Let's do it then. Alan turned and stepped over to the freezer door, gently pushing it open again and listening intently for several seconds before giving his comrades a thumbs up. The three of them moved quietly from the freezer, Eddie grabbing the door and securing it before picking up his pace to catch the others. Alan led the group across the storeroom toward the metal shuttered door at the far end. As they approached, they could see shadows moving on the other side of it, through the crack at the bottom. Every time a creature ran past, the three of them flinched, but remained quiet, not wanting to alert the ghouls to their presence. Alan pulled them aside a few yards from the door, speaking low so that only they could hear. That door is going to make a hell of a racket when I throw it open, so we're going to have to move. I'll cover the right if you want to cover the left, Eddie said. Alan gave his friend a nod before the three of them moved over to the door. The trucker took a knee at the base of the door, grasping the handle tightly. He turned around and began a silent countdown, mouthing the words 3, 2, 1 before pulling. The door made a horrific clatter as it retracted into the housing at the top of the wall. In an instant, moans emanated from both sides, drawing the trucker's attention. Alan glanced to the left, spotting a couple of creatures running in their direction, only a few yards away. Rather than wait for them to catch up, he pounced, darting toward them with his meat-tenderizing hammer at the ready. He grabbed onto the shirt of the lead creature once it was within arm's reach, delivering a forceful strike to the top of its head. He could feel the zombie's skull crater upon impact, causing the body to go limp. Alan shoved the corpse back as hard as he could, sending it into the other zombie that was quickly closing the gap. The rampaging creature got its legs tied up with the body, resulting in a face plant onto the pavement. Alan wasted no time in delivering a forceful strike to the back of the creature's head, ending the threat. Before he could scan the parking lot for more threats, he heard Brooke screaming from behind him. Alan, help! Alan spun around to see Brooke with her arms wrapped around the neck of a zombie, trying her best to pull the creature off of Eddie. The trucker had the palm of his hand firmly against the zombie's forehead, trying desperately to hold its mouth away from his arm. Alan ran in their direction, closing the distance quickly but forced to ignore their battle as another ghoul emerged from the darkness. The trucker pulled the tenderizer back, swinging it across his body toward the creature as it got close. Despite the frantic nature of the swing, it connected on the side of the zombie's head, knocking the ghoul off its feet and to the ground. Alan drove the blunt edge of the makeshift weapon into its head once more, just for good measure, before his attention was drawn back to his friends as Eddie yelled out. Alan turned just in time to see the creature clamping down on Eddie's arm. The son of a bitch! Alan rushed up to his friend, getting there as the zombie pulled the chunk of flesh free from its victim. He yelled out as he came up from behind. Get down! The waitress glanced over her shoulder, spotting Alan readying for an attack. The young woman ducked down, providing an opening for the trucker to strike. With a forceful blow, the unlife from the creature quickly faded, collapsing onto the ground in a non-threatening heap. The three of them stood there in silence for a moment, everyone staring at the bite wound on Eddie's arm. The shock overwhelmed them, breaking out of their trance only when they heard moaning coming from the lot. "Can you still drive?" Alan asked. Eddie glared at his friend, flipping him off with his wounded arm. "I'll take that as a yes. Let's move." The three survivors raced through the parking lot, hearing movement and moans coming from the other side of the trucks. Alan looked up to one of the vehicles as they went by, spotting smeared blood on the interior of the windshield. He quickly put it out of his mind, knowing that there was nothing he could do for the driver inside. "I'm over here," Eddie yelled. Eddie pointed to a rig just across from where they were, before he and Brooke headed toward it. "I'm 2 more up. Head to the back exit." Eddie gave his friend a thumbs up before Alan raced over to his truck. He came around the front end of the vehicle, his footsteps creating enough noise to draw the attention of a zombie at the far end. The ghoul let out a moan and began sprinting toward the front. Alan didn't panic, casually opening up the door and jumping inside, slamming the door shut just before the ghoul reached it. He sat there for a second, grabbing a towel off the passenger seat to wipe some of the blood from his hands. As he cleaned himself off, the creature outside reached the door and began smacking its hands against it. The first impact caused Alan to flinch, a sensation that quickly faded once he realized he was safe. He reached down, sliding the key into the ignition and starting it up before reaching over to click on the radio, tuning it to the correct channel. "Hey, Big Ed, do you copy, brother?" "Yeah, I'm here," Eddie replied. "How's that arm?" "It's fine." Eddie spoke defiantly, but Brooke yelled over him. "It's bleeding pretty bad." There was some muffled talking for a moment before Eddie came back on the line. This time his tone was more conciliatory. "Brooke is going to try and bandage it up as best she can. But he's going to need stitches and probably half a dozen shots so it doesn't get infected," Brooke said. "We don't have time for it," Eddie replied. Alan thought about things for a moment as the duo on the other end of the line continued bickering. He looked up to a picture of Mabel that was secured on his dash, staring into her eyes and hearing her voice in his head. "Yeah, I know, Mabel, you want me home. But if I don't take him to get his arm looked at, you're going to make me sleep on the couch for a month." Alan continued staring at the picture of Mabel, who continued staring into his soul through the image. With a deep sigh, he clicked the radio on and spoke. "Listen, Eddie, we don't know this is happening everywhere, and the hospital in Lenore is just half a mile off the highway. It can't hurt anything to do a drive-by." "I don't want to be any trouble," Eddie replied. "And I don't want to be in trouble with Mabel if I don't at least try to get you to the hospital. So just stay close and I'll give you a heads up when we're making the turn." Alan listened for Eddie's response, hearing a good 10 seconds of laughter before anything resembling words began to form. "Yeah, that's probably a good call, buddy. Lead the way." "All right, here we go." Chapter 4. Alan kept the speed on his rig modest, not wanting to risk an accident on the highway headed north. The sun was just beginning to peek out over the horizon to his right, casting an eerie yet beautiful glow over the mountainous and tree-filled landscape. The road sign on the side of the road read Lenore 1 mile, causing him to slow down even further. He knew that the first stretch of houses would be coming up shortly and didn't want to take any chances. As he kept his eyes on the road ahead, his gaze drifted over to his phone, which was firmly planted in a holder on the dash. After a few seconds of mental debate, he reached over and clicked the screen on. With a few quick presses, the line began to ring inside the cab of the truck. The word Mabel lit up at the top of the screen. "I know you're not feeling well, baby, but I need you to answer," Alan said softly, his voice barely audible. The phone rang several times before Alan spoke out again. "Please, just answer. I really need you to answer, Mabel," Alan repeated. The ringing continued a few more times until the voicemail on Mabel's end clicked on. Alan got a little choked up when he heard her voice coming through the speakers. "This is Mabel. If you're hearing this, it means I'm either driving through the middle of nowhere and have no reception, or I'm in a cheap motel getting freaky with my man, in which case, you're welcome for me not answering. If it's important, Hang up and text me like a civilized person." Her voice chimed with playful sarcasm. The line beeped, leaving Alan speechless for a few seconds as he struggled to come up with what to say. "I love you, Mabel. Call me," Alan finally murmured, his heart heavy. Alan reached up and switched his phone off, taking a moment to compose himself as he approached the front edge of town. He slowed the truck down further, crawling down the street at a mere 10 miles an hour, prompting Eddie to call in on the radio. "Alan, what the hell is going on up there?" Eddie's voice crackled through the speaker. Alan looked over to the side of the road towards the entrance to a neighborhood, spotting a handful of creatures surrounding a car that was flipped over onto its hood in a ditch. He shook his shock off, grabbing the radio and responding. "You'll see it soon enough," Alan said, his voice steady, though his grip tightened on the wheel. A few seconds passed before Alan could hear a deep sigh coming through the radio. "Jesus Christ, Alan, what the hell is going on?" Eddie asked. "I don't know, Eddie, I just don't know," Alan replied. "I guess that means the hospital is a no-go," Eddie said, his tone resigned. "We don't know that," Alan retorted quickly. "I'm pretty sure we do," Eddie shot back. "We're still going to go by and check it out," Alan insisted. "That's a hell of a risk, and not one you should be making on my account," Eddie warned. "We're doing it, Eddie, if it makes you feel better. If the shit has hit the fan as hard as we think it has, then we were going to have to pull off the highway at some point anyway. But if it's not as bad as we think, then maybe the police have secured the hospital so you can get treated," Alan explained, trying to offer some reassurance. A light chuckle came back over the radio. "You know, Alan, my biggest regret in life was not playing poker with you. Because that is the worst damn bluff I've ever heard in my life," Eddie teased, the tension easing slightly. Alan couldn't help but laugh as well, knowing his friend was right. "Well, Eddie, when we get to my place, I got a deck of cards. We can use the snack cakes that are hopefully in the back of your truck as the chips," Alan suggested, his smile audible through the radio. "Or we can use actual chips," Eddie replied with a smirk in his voice. "Either way, we need to change the subject because I'm getting hungry," Alan said. "Same here, man, same here," Eddie agreed. Alan looked up ahead, spotting the cross street for the hospital. "It's the next block up, we're hanging a left," Alan said. "Lead the way, buddy, lead the way," Eddie encouraged. Alan made the turn onto the next street, watching in his rearview mirror to make sure his partner was right behind him. The two-truck convoy rolled down the street, just a few blocks from the hospital. Hope began to bubble up within Alan when he spotted a handful of police cars in the middle of the street ahead, forming a makeshift barricade around the front of the hospital. The lights on top were flashing, making it difficult to get a full read on the situation from a couple of blocks away. "Now we're talking. It looks like they're on top of things," Alan said. Alan kept his focus to the front, slowing down just in case the officers had itchy trigger fingers. From the looks of things on the road leading up to the cars, they hadn't been shy about unloading on the zombies, with a handful of corpses lying dormant on the asphalt. Alan hovered his foot over the brakes, gently pressing them down as the scene before him became clearer. While there were corpses in the middle of the road, the officers who put them there were nowhere to be found. The entire area behind their vehicles within the makeshift roadblock was empty. Alan came to a full stop a block away from the hospital, not daring to get any closer. Within seconds, the radio roared to life. "What's the holdup, Alan?" Eddie asked, his voice full of impatience. "Just hang tight, Eddie. I want to make sure I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing," Alan replied, his eyes scanning the area ahead. "Well, all I can see is the ass end of your rig, so why don't you do a little show and tell for the rest of us?" Eddie said. "The police are up ahead and taken down a few of those people, but..." Alan trailed off, his attention focused on something moving near the hospital. "But what?" Eddie pressed. "But I don't see them anymore," Alan said. "Maybe they went inside the hospital," Brooke suggested, her voice coming through the radio. "She might be right. Nobody in their right mind would be outside in this mess," Eddie agreed. Alan continued staring at the moving figure, trying to get a read on them. The figure moved in a disjointed manner, as if it was injured and not in full control of their faculties. Finally, Alan grabbed the phone off his dash, clicking on the camera and zooming in as far as he could. It took a few moments for him to get the lens lined up properly, bringing the figure into focus. He let out a defeated sigh when he saw the bloody and tattered uniform of the zombified officer. Several chunks of flesh were missing from his limbs and upper torso, the wounds looking fresh. "Son of a bitch," Alan muttered under his breath. Alan clicked the radio back on. "Well, I found the police, and they're ripped to shreds," Alan said. "So the hospital is a no-go then," Eddie said. "Looks that way," Alan replied flatly. "So what are we—" Eddie started, but was suddenly cut off by a violent crashing sound coming from the back of his truck. Metal on metal scraped together for a split second before falling silent. "Eddie, what the hell was that?" Alan shouted. "Oh, son of a bitch," Eddie yelled in frustration. "Talk to me, Eddie," Alan demanded. "Some dumb asshole just T-boned me," Eddie snapped. "How bad is it?" Alan asked. "The whole hood is underneath the trailer," Eddie replied. "Damn it," Alan muttered under his breath. Alan looked up towards the zombified police officer who had taken notice of the sudden crash. In a flash, it began sprinting in their direction. "Is your arm good enough to unhitch your rig?" Alan asked. "Yeah, but why?" Eddie responded, sounding confused. "Because we're passing a supercenter on the way out and might need to do some light shopping," Alan said. "Am I clear up there?" Eddie asked. "You're gonna be once I take care of this cop. Now get your ass in gear," Alan ordered. Alan put the radio back in its holder before reaching over and grabbing his meat tenderizer. He threw open the cab door, jumping down onto the street and marching to the front of his truck, staring at the zombified police officer as it got closer. Alan looked past the ghoul, focusing on the hospital and spotting several zombies pouring out of the front entrance. He froze in place, not wanting to give them a reason to come in his direction. However, the zombified police officer did that for him, by letting out a deafening moan. "Damn it," Alan muttered, frustration rising in his chest. Alan raced forward, meeting the zombie up the street. Rather than go for a kill shot right out of the gate, he lowered his shoulder and picked up speed, using the 50 pounds he had on the creature to his advantage. Upon impact, the zombified officer launched off its feet, spinning through the air and slamming hard onto the ground. Alan quickly spun around, planting his knee into the creature's back and delivering a forceful strike to its head. The second blow fully cracked the skull, ending its unlife. Moans filled the air down the street, a mob of bloodied, dead flesh closing the less than 2-block distance in a hurry. Alan snapped into the moment, reaching down to the officer's holster for his weapon. The trucker let out a string of curses when he saw it was missing. "Yeah, that figures," Alan muttered under his breath. Alan pounced back to his feet, running as hard as he could back toward his rig, spotting Eddie back at his truck disconnecting the air brakes from the trailer. He put 2 fingers in his mouth and let out a loud whistle to get his attention. "Get your ass back in the truck," Alan shouted. Eddie gave his friend a nod as he worked furiously to finish up the disconnection. Alan, meanwhile, raced back to his cab, throwing open the door and climbing inside, slamming it shut with a few seconds to spare. Alan looked at his mirrors, trying to spot Eddie, but couldn't get a clean look as they were parked too close together. His attention then turned to the radio, staring at it as if he was trying to will the device to life. "Come on, Eddie, get in there, man. Get in there," Alan muttered. A few tense moments passed before Eddie's voice came through the radio. "All right, we're good. Let's get the hell out of here," Eddie called out. "We're hanging a right and hauling ass to the north part of the city," Alan replied. "I'm with you, man. Just floor it before those things surround us," Eddie urged. "Relax, we're in big-ass trucks. They can't get in," Alan said. "No, but they can get caught up in the wheel well. I had to clean a deer out from there a few months back, and I really don't want to have to do that again while fighting those assholes off," Eddie countered, a hint of humor cutting through the tension. Alan thought about it for a moment before chuckling and throwing the truck into gear. "Yeah, that's a solid point, Eddie. All right, we're rolling out. Next stop, the Supercenter." Chapter 5. Alan continued to lead the 2-truck convoy to the northern side of Lenore, trying his best to keep his emotions in check as he went. While they were traveling on side roads, not the main highway cutting through the heart of town, the signs of carnage were all around. To either side of the road, he could see creatures running wild, some chasing after helpless victims, while others fought to break inside buildings to reach the survivors trapped inside. Alan forced himself to stare straight ahead. not only to be prepared for the stray creature that might rush the front of the truck, but to avoid making eye contact with those trapped. He knew there was nothing that could be done to help them, and didn't want the guilt of leaving them behind on his mind. "Alan, are you there?" Brooke's voice crackled through the radio. Alan reached down for the radio to respond, fearful of why she was calling out and not Eddie. "Yeah, I'm here, Brooke. Is everything okay back there?" he asked. Brooke began to respond, but she had to pause when Eddie tried to talk over her. She held the receiver against her body, muffling the words and making it impossible for Alan to make them out. After several moments, she managed to get Eddie to stop talking so she could continue. "Sorry about that," Brooke said. "It's okay, what's going on?" Alan asked. "It's Eddie's arm. It's bleeding really bad," Brooke explained. "Just hang tight, we're almost to the supercenter," Alan reassured her. Another commotion came over the radio. Like the others in the trailing truck were fighting over the radio. After a moment, Eddie's voice came through loud and clear. "You can't seriously be thinking of going inside the supercenter, are you?" Eddie said. "It's not really high up on my wish list, buddy, but we need to get that arm looked at," Alan replied. "You saw the hospital and it was a madhouse. God only knows how bad the supercenter is going to be." "You're not doing that on my account," Eddie insisted. "Well, if I'm being perfectly honest, I was just trying to make you feel special. We need to figure out which truck we're going to snipe with your rig. Unless you got X-ray vision and didn't tell me, we need to know what's still on those trucks," Alan said with a grin. Eddie let out a deep sigh before continuing. "The only way we're going in is if we can do it safely," Eddie said. "Don't worry, bud. I got an idea. Just be ready to park beside me when I give you the signal," Alan said, determination in his voice. "Okay, I'm following your lead," Eddie replied. Alan replaced the receiver on the radio, taking hold of the wheel with both hands as he increased his speed. He braced for impact as two creatures bounced off the front grille, flying off to either side of the road, lifeless. "These things aren't that bright, are they?" Alan muttered, shaking his head. He flicked on his turn signal, letting Eddie know they were headed to the left. At the next intersection, he made the turn, getting the supercenter in view. Alan slammed on the brakes as soon as he caught sight of the mob of creatures stationed outside the front door of the building. Within seconds, Eddie's voice blared over the radio. "There's no way in hell we're going in there," Eddie said. "Calm your tits, Eddie. We don't have to go in through the front door," Alan said, trying to keep his cool. "What the hell does it matter what door we go in through? Those things are swarming," Eddie shot back. "Calm down and think for a second, man. Look at how many of those people are crowded around the front of the building. If the doors were open, they'd be going inside, but they're not," Alan explained. Eddie paused for a moment before responding. "We're doing a drive-by. If it doesn't look clear inside, then we're moving on," Eddie said. "Yeah, that's fine. Let's drive up and see what we got," Alan replied, his grip tightening on the wheel. Alan put the truck back into gear with Eddie close behind. They drove slowly, making the turn into the supercenter parking lot and heading toward the front of the store. As they got close, several creatures broke away from the pack and rushed toward their vehicles. However, they were moving too slowly for the ghouls to be damaged when contact was made. Alan drove along the front of the store, giving himself a good view of the interior. He was relieved to see no movement inside. "Well, it doesn't look like those people are inside, but let's see if anybody's home," Alan said, taking a deep breath. He reached over and pulled down on the horn affixed to the top of his rig, sending out a deafening sound throughout the parking lot. Come on, somebody's got to be home," Alan muttered, staring through the window, almost willing someone to notice him. His prayers were answered shortly thereafter as a middle-aged man stood up in the window, waving frantically at him. "Bingo, we're in business," Alan said with a grin. Alan made a series of hand gestures, letting the man know they were driving around to the back of the store. It took a moment for the survivor to catch on, but a few moments later, it clicked. He gave Alan a thumbs up before racing off to the back of the store. "All right, Eddie, we're headed around to the back. Just pull up beside me when I park," Alan said. 10-4, Eddie replied. Alan hit the gas, picking up speed and making the turn around to the back of the building. The noise the truck was generating was enough to keep a handful of ghouls focused on him as they went. Alan was unconcerned about their presence as he continued driving around, making the turn to the back, letting out a smile as he saw the docking bays mostly empty. The only trailers that were in place were at the far end, leaving half a dozen of them wide open. "Thank God for little miracles," Alan muttered to himself. Alan adjusted his course, getting as close to the building as he could without scraping the side of the truck against it. He managed to get his cab parallel with one of the bay doors, leaving only a few feet gap between himself and the building. He threw open the door, holding onto it tightly for balance as he reached out and knocked on the raised docking bay door. While he waited for a response, Eddie pulled up beside him, both men rolling down their windows to talk. "So, how do you plan on getting through that door?" Eddie asked. "Just a little patience," Alan replied. Alan smiled as the docking bay door rolled up, revealing a trio of haggard-looking survivors. The middle-aged man who had spotted him was flanked by a young couple, no more than 20 years old. All three of them bore the scars of battle, with tattered clothes and blood splattered on them. "Well, ain't you a sight for sore eyes," the middle-aged man said. "Right back at you, man." "I'm Alan," Alan said, offering a hand. "I'm William. The youngsters here are Kevin and Olivia," the man introduced, gesturing to the young couple. Alan nodded to the others, receiving a friendly wave in response. "Give me just a second, I gotta get my friends Eddie and Brooke," Alan said. Alan slid over to the passenger side seat, looking down at the parking lot below. There were a couple of creatures wedged between the gap of the trucks, but neither of them was able to move very much. He threw open the door, wincing as it clanged against the side of Eddie's truck. "Really, man?" Eddie said with a raised eyebrow. "Sorry, while you get patched up, I'll hit the automotive section and get you some touch-up paint," Alan said, offering a sheepish grin. Eddie shook his head as he opened his door, creating a pathway for them to climb into Alan's rig. It took a few moments for the trio to get inside the store, being helped over the gap by the survivors. "Damn, man, are you okay? That looks like it's bleeding pretty bad there," Kevin said. Eddie looked down at his wound, a flood of emotions going through his mind as he thought back to the cook who had reanimated after a bite. He stammered for a moment, trying to find the right words so he wouldn't panic the other survivors, not knowing what horrors they'd seen up to this point in the morning. "Yeah, it's just a flesh wound. I'll live," Eddie said, forcing a weak smile. Olivia stepped up, gently grabbing onto his arm to inspect it. At first, Eddie recoiled, but he softened quickly once he realized she wasn't a threat. The young woman pulled back on the makeshift bandage, getting a look at the wound. "One of those people bit you pretty good there, didn't they?" Olivia asked. Eddie looked at her, his gaze softening as he gave her a subtle, defeated nod. "It's okay. There are a few others inside who met the business end of some teeth. I already have an aid station set up in the pharmacy section. Come on, I'll get you patched up," Olivia said, offering a comforting smile. Eddie looked back at Alan, who motioned for him to go with Olivia. "Don't worry. I'll take care of things with the truck." "You just worry about getting put back together, old man," Alan said with a grin. "I'll go with him to make sure he behaves," Brooke added. "Thanks, Brooke. I'll be up there in a few minutes," Alan replied. Olivia led the group back toward the front of the store, leaving Alan and William alone in the back storeroom. At first, Alan began to follow, but William gave him a touch on the arm, getting him to stay behind. "Something on your mind, William?" Alan asked. "Just a little concerned about what you are going to take care of," William said, his voice wary. "We have an extra rig out there, so we're planning on taking one of the trucks docked back here. Preferably a full one," Alan explained. "Really? Just like that? You think you're going to waltz in here and take stuff away from us?" William asked, his tone skeptical. "It's not like that, William. When we made this plan, we had no idea there would still be people here," Alan said, trying to make him understand. "Well, there are. About a dozen of us, and we're not just going to hand over stuff willy-nilly. For starters, I think the store manager might have something to say about it. That boy toes the company line like nobody's business. I had to give him my credit card before he'd let us start treating the injured with store property," William said, shaking his head. "Well, he's going to get a quick education about the situation because I'm pretty sure we're on our own," Alan said, his voice hardening. "One of the girls up front said she talked to the police not too long ago," William added. "She might have talked to a dispatcher, but the police I saw were gone," Alan said with a frown. "What do you mean, gone?" William asked, confusion in his voice. "I mean, they were like those people out front. We drove by the hospital and they had been overrun, Alan explained. Jesus, William muttered. Tell me about it, Alan replied. If that's the case, then we're really not going to be handing stuff over, William said. Alan thought about it for a moment before spotting a couple of small generators wrapped up on a pallet. And I wouldn't expect you to, at least not without some compensation, Alan said, gesturing toward the generators. Not sure your cash is going to do a whole lot for us, William said, raising an eyebrow. How about gas? Alan suggested, his eyes locking with William's. William gave Alan a curious look, prompting the trucker to point toward the generators. It gets mighty cold up here in the winter, so keeping some heaters going might be a good thing. You let us stock up on some goods, I'll let you fill up as many containers as you can get with gas. We both benefit, Alan explained, a hint of a smile on his lips. William contemplated the offer for a moment, but before he could answer, the store's intercom system sprang to life. A panicked voice yelled through the speakers. They're loose in the pharmacy. We need help. Chapter 6. William let out a string of curse words as he smacked Alan on the chest. The survivor's tone turned deadly serious in a split second. Do you have a weapon? William asked. In the truck, Alan replied. Forget it, we'll pick you up one on the way. William waved his hand, getting Alan to follow as he led them out of the back room. As he approached the door, William grabbed a bloody baseball bat that was leaning up against the wall, not breaking stride as he shoved open the swinging door into the store. Screams could be heard coming from the front of the store, occasionally peppered with pleas for help. Rather than race toward the conflict, William moved quickly down the back aisle several yards before making a turn. Alan kept pace, following the older man as he moved swiftly down the sporting goods aisle, stopping beside a collection of baseball equipment on the shelf. He reached over, grabbed a bat, and tossed it over to the trucker. Aim for the head. That seems to do the trick, William said. Lead the way. Let's crack some skulls, Alan responded. William nodded before leading the duo toward the front of the store, stopping them at the top of sporting goods, right at the center aisle that cut through the heart of the store. He spotted a couple of people running toward the back storeroom, luckily not being pursued by any creatures. William motioned for Alan to step over to the next aisle as they continued pushing toward the front of the store. The two of them darted across the center crossway, spreading out and taking their own path. Alan slowed as he reached the halfway point of the next aisle, hearing the sickening sound of teeth gnashing together and chewing on wet flesh. He double-checked the grip on his bat, getting it into a ready position before continuing on. The trucker reached the top part of the aisle, getting the full view of the pharmacy. His eyes went wide at the sight of so much blood, clearly from multiple unwilling donors. Alan's head shot up as he caught notice of movement coming from just across from him. 3 zombies were on their knees, surrounding a victim that twitched with every bite. For the moment, they hadn't taken notice of him, but Alan knew that could change at any moment. The trucker flinched when William let the tip of his bat strike the floor, sending a metallic pinging sound reverberating through the air. Alan's eyes went wide when the 3 ghouls just across from him looked around for the source, quickly locking onto him. Damn it, Alan muttered. Alan began to backpedal as the trio of ghouls leapt to their feet to sprint in his direction. Attack options raced through his mind, quickly coming to the conclusion that if he swung the bat once, the ones that didn't get knocked down would overwhelm him. The first zombie was on him in a flash, getting a couple of steps ahead of the others and getting dangerously close to the trucker. With no other option, Alan pulled the bat up across his body, shoving it forward into the creature's chest as it approached. The ghoul's ribs cracked as it made contact with the metal after being forced to stop abruptly by the trucker. It reached out for its prey, grabbing onto Alan's shirt and struggling to pull him in for a fresh meal. However, the trucker held his ground. Alan positioned himself against the shelves, trying to provide himself an angle with which to hold the trio of ghouls off. The other 2 that were close behind the lead creature slammed into their leader's back, pushing it ever closer to the trucker. William, I need help, Alan shouted. The trucker strained his muscles, trying to keep the creatures at bay, watching helplessly as the ghoul in the back came around the others and lunged for his arm. Alan let out a scream as the zombie's teeth sunk into the top of his forearm, ripping out a chunk of flesh. The zombie chewed for a couple of seconds before collapsing to the ground from a baseball bat strike to the back of its head. Despite the zombie having its head caved in just a few inches away, the other two zombies didn't take notice of William, making them easy marks to take out. As quickly as the assault began, it ended, leaving the two men standing in the middle of the aisle, zombie corpses at their feet. Once Alan snapped back into the moment, he reached out his good arm and grabbed William by the shirt, pulling him in and getting nose to nose with him. While his tone was low, the underlying hint of rage permeated through it. "Why in the hell did you make that noise with your bat?" Alan demanded. William tried to backpedal, but couldn't due to the trucker's grip on him. He tried to sound apologetic, but fear was the only emotion he could muster. "I'm sorry, I really am," William said. "But I didn't see any of those people, and thought it might be a way to lure them out." "Well, guess what, asshole? You succeeded," Alan spat. Alan held up his injured arm, forcing William to look at the result of his failed ploy. Before the trucker could continue laying into the frightened man, the speakers in the store blared to life again. "William, I just saw you. If you're still alive, we really need help at the office. We're trapped in here and there are a bunch of those people trying to get inside." William turned around to Alan, speaking softly in the hopes that it would calm him. "Look, I know you want nothing more than to beat my ass into oblivion." "And I'd be justified in doing so," Alan retorted. "Undoubtedly. But right now we need to work together and help those people out, because there's nobody else who can." Alan stared William down for a few seconds before turning away in disgust. The trucker wanted to make him pay for his stupidity, but he knew he was right. "Come on, we're doing this my way," Alan said. William wasn't thrilled with the prospect of turning the mission over to the trucker, but he didn't want to press his luck. "Lead the way," William muttered. Alan stepped past William, making a point to bump his shoulder into the man's chest, letting him know that he wasn't done with him. The trucker made his way up to the top of the aisle, scanning across the pharmacy to make sure it was empty. Once he was confident that they were in the clear, he turned his attention toward the mob. Alan led them out from cover and toward the front of the store, ducking into the last aisle so that they could survey the situation. Just on the other side of the entrance, by the registers, stood half a dozen zombies. Every single one of them was pressed up against the office door, trying to force their way inside. "We can go up behind them and take them out, just like I did to those three back there," William suggested. "And if they turn around before we get through the majority of them, we're just going to end up adding to their numbers," Alan countered. William thought about it for a moment before giving a conciliatory nod. Before Alan could go back into planning mode, William's face lit up as if he just had an epiphany. "What is it?" Alan asked. "What if we use the checkout counters?" William asked. "Use them how?" Alan asked, confused. "We can get up on top, make a little noise, and let them come to us," William said. Alan shook his head, not thrilled with the idea. "That sounds like a great way to get your calf ripped out," Alan muttered. Alan paused for a moment, piquing William's interest. "You got an idea?" William asked. "Yeah, I think I do," Alan said. "Those things like to run in a straight line, don't they?" "That's been my experience, limited as it has been," William replied. "Look over at the second checkout lane," Alan said. Alan pointed over, getting William to look. He began nodding his head in approval when he spotted the lane blocked off by a couple of shopping carts. "If we can lure them down it, they'll be sitting ducks," Alan said. "How do you feel about being bait?" Alan asked. "Not the greatest, but after my screw-up back there, I feel like I owe you one," William replied. "Damn right you do. Now come on, let's get into position," Alan said. Alan and William doubled back toward the center aisle, cutting over so that they could approach the checkout line from behind cover. It took a few moments before they were in position by the register. Alan gently pushed the shopping carts out of the way, motioning for William to move up. The trucker mouthed the words, "Trust me," to his partner, putting him at ease. At least as much as one could be at ease given the situation. William moved up slowly, stopping at the far end of the checkout line, staring across at the half-dozen creatures who were still oblivious to his presence. He glanced back to Alan, who gave him a thumbs up. With a deep sigh, William picked up his bat, driving the tip into the floor and sending up the signal. A split second later, The creatures by the door turned and took notice, letting out moans before rushing toward him. William turned and pumped his legs as hard as he could, getting through the checkout line. As he slid by, Alan shoved the shopping carts in the way, ducking down and putting his weight against the blockade to hold it in place. The creatures hit the line hard, causing the wheels on the carts to squeal in protest as they skidded across the floor. Alan managed to keep the line secure, trapping the ghouls in the checkout line. "For the love of God, start swinging," Alan shouted. William pounced to his feet, running back to the line with his bat in hand. He lined up his first shot, delivering a violent kill shot. The defeated creature slumped over in a heap, allowing another one to take its place by the cart. One by one, William exterminated the threat with ruthless efficiency. After a few moments, he stopped, stepping back from the carts and placing the bat at his side. This only served to confuse Alan, who could still feel one creature thrashing about. "What in the hell are you doing?" Alan asked. "I'm sorry, Alan, I really am, but I think you need to take this one," William said, his voice full of regret. Alan closed his eyes, shaking his head as, in his heart, he already knew what awaited him when he stood up. Finally, he summoned the courage to rise, turning around to see his longtime friend Eddie reaching out for him. The wound on his arm had a matching pair near his throat, both of them fresh, and clearly the cause of his demise. Alan stared at his friend for a few moments, hoping that recognition would dawn on the zombified trucker. It didn't take long for it to become painfully evident that a miracle wasn't going to take place. "I'm sorry, brother, I really am," Alan whispered. Alan reached his hand out for William's bat, taking it into his hand before stepping up and delivering the kill shot to his friend's head. One single strike was all it took to crack the skull. The zombified Eddie staggered for a moment, looking right at Alan before falling backward to the ground. William felt the urge to say something comforting, however, no words came to mind. The two men continued standing in silence, neither sure of how to process what had just happened. Chapter 7. Alan sat in the pharmacy section as Brooke tended to his wound, wincing as she applied peroxide. "I'm so sorry, Alan," Brooke said. "It's okay, Brooke, it needed to be done," Alan replied. I'm so sorry about everything. Your injury, Eddie, just everything," Brooke added. "I know, Brooke, but none of it is your fault. I'm just glad that you're all right," Alan reassured her. "I don't even know how I survived. One second I'm putting bandages on Eddie, and the next second Kevin and Olivia are dragging me up to the front office. We were the last ones in before... Brooke trailed off, struggling to compose herself as she thought back to the horrific scene. "People were trapped outside, and we couldn't help them," Brooke murmured. Brooke began crying, and Alan placed his hand on top of hers, gently caressing it to get her to calm down. "You don't have to think about it anymore. You're safe now," Alan said softly. "I'm just worried about what they're going to do with you. Because of..." Brooke nodded towards Alan's bite mark, causing him to chuckle a bit. "Don't worry, I'm going to be hitting the road once you get me patched up," Alan reassured her. "Hitting the road? Why in the world would you do that? We might be able to..." Brooke started, but Alan held up his hand, getting her to stop talking. "You need to stay safe, and from the looks of things, me being here isn't the best way to do that," Alan said firmly. "Bullshit. We don't know what those bites do," Brooke retorted. "We have a pretty good idea. And besides, I need to get home to Mabel. She's probably worried sick about me, assuming she's awake and has turned on the television," Alan explained. Brooke nodded as she applied the bandage, wrapping it tightly before securing it to itself. She tugged at it to make sure it would stay in place before patting Alan on the shoulder. "I think you're good to go," Brooke said. "Well, at least as good as I'm going to get," Alan replied, with a small grin. Brooke forced herself to laugh, even though she really didn't want to. She rose to her feet as Alan stood up. Before he could walk away, she lunged forward, wrapping her arms around him for a tight embrace. "Thank you for doing what you did for me today. If it wasn't for you and Eddie, I'd be running around the truck stop as one of those things," Brooke said, voice muffled against his chest. Alan smiled as he hugged the waitress tightly before breaking the embrace. He looked her in the eye, speaking sincerely. "Whatever is going on out there, you're going to live through it. William seems like a good man with his head on straight. Stick with him and you'll be all right," Alan said. Brooke gave him a half-hearted nod and smile as Alan turned to head towards the back of the store. He looked around as he went, spotting a handful of survivors walking around, moving goods around in an attempt to make the store a little more livable. Two people set up lounge chairs beside a charcoal grill, where someone else was getting a fire going. Alan's stomach rumbled a bit at the mere thought of food, but he knew he had to keep pressing on. Alan stepped through into the back of the store, where William was busy grabbing a plastic gasoline container that was being passed down to him by Kevin, who was on top of the truck. "We got 2 more filling up, but I think that's all she wrote," Kevin said. "Good, get them filled up and get down here because I think our friend wants to get on the road," William said. Alan walked up to William, who turned to greet him warmly. "Good to see that you're up and about," William said. Alan held up his injured arm, showing off the fresh bandage. "Brooke did a great job of patching me up," Alan said. "You have my word that I'll keep her safe," William promised. "I hope that you can, but I have no doubt that you'll try," Alan said. "I know that I messed up with," William began, but Alan held his hand up, getting him to stop talking. "It doesn't matter. It was the heat of battle and you did what you thought was right," Alan said. William stayed silent, just nodding in thanks as Alan looked over to the stack of gas cans set off to the side. There were dozens stacked up together, with several more being carried off to the back wall of the loading dock. "How much were you able to get?" Alan asked. "I think we got a couple 100 gallons," William replied. "That should last you a while, assuming you ration properly," Alan said. "They may protest, but I'll keep them on a tight leash, because from the looks of things we might be here a while," William said. Alan reached out his good arm for William to shake, giving the two men a brief moment to connect. "You keep my girl safe, you hear?" Alan said. "I will, you have my word," William promised. Alan stepped over towards his truck as Kevin and Olivia jumped back into the loading dock with the last 2 containers of gas. "Are you on your way?" Kevin asked. "Yeah, my wife is expecting me up in Blowing Rock, and I don't want to keep her waiting," Alan replied. "Be safe out there. Oh, and be sure to check the passenger seat." "I left you a little something for the road," Olivia said. Alan smiled at the young woman as he stepped over to the edge of the dock, making the short leap over to his truck. He pulled himself inside the cab, getting situated before starting it up. Alan let the truck idle for a few moments, wanting it to be in top shape for the ride home. As he looked out the front, his nose began to twitch at an unfamiliar smell. His attention was drawn to the passenger seat, where a small platter of hot breakfast food sat. Alan grabbed the styrofoam container, opening it up to reveal a couple of microwaved breakfast sandwiches, which was a nice complement to the hot cup of coffee sitting in the cup holder. He turned around to look back to the dock, giving the young Olivia a smile and thumbs up. "God bless that girl," Alan muttered. Alan took a huge bite out of the sandwich as he threw the truck into gear, the vehicle lurching forward and pushing through the handful of ghouls in front of it. Before long, he was back on the highway, headed north out of the city. The streets were mostly clear, with only a handful of wrecked cars and zombies running about. This trend continued on his way out of the city, reaching the wooded area just to the north. The morning sun was getting higher in the sky, making it a bit easier to navigate the winding road. Alan continued enjoying his hot breakfast as he crept along the road, only to be startled when a panicked voice came over the radio. "Please, does anybody copy?" the voice crackled. Alan thought about ignoring it, but caught a vision of Mabel staring back at him in the picture. "Yeah, okay, Mabel, I know, I need to answer, even if I can't do anything," Alan muttered to himself. Alan reached over for the radio, grabbing it and clicking it on. "Yeah, I copy," Alan said. "Oh, thank God, please, we need your help," the voice pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I'm on the road to Blowing Rock, coming out of Lenore. So, unless you're on this stretch, I can't do anything," Alan explained. "Well, today's my lucky day, because there's a group of us trapped up at the mountain gift depot a few miles north of Lenore," the voice said. Alan let out a deep sigh, looking back over to Mabel's picture, reacting as if she was scolding him to offer his assistance. "Yeah, I know, Mabel, you're right," Alan muttered. Alan clicked back on the radio. I know where that's at. I should be there in a few minutes, so just hang tight and I'll see what I can do, Alan said. Alan hit the gas, picking up speed towards the tourist trap gift center that was only a few miles away. His gaze occasionally drifted over to the photo of Mabel, talking to her as he went. I promise I'll be safe, and quick because I know you want me home. Don't worry, this shouldn't be a big deal, Alan said. Alan trailed off as he came around a bend, spotting the building just up ahead. He slowed down to a crawl, eventually stopping a few hundred yards from the parking lot, giving himself a chance to soak in the situation he stumbled into. Jesus Christ, can't anything be easy today? Alan muttered. The parking lot of the gift center was half full, dozens of cars scattered about, seemingly one for every zombie that was crowded around the door. He stared at the scene for a few moments before picking up the radio and barking into it. All right, whoever you are, I'm just up the street, Alan said. Thank you, we're so glad that you're here, the voice said. Well, don't thank me yet because I'm not really sure what you think I can do, Alan said. Is that you in the big rig? The voice asked. Yup, that's me, Alan confirmed. Can't you just, plow through them? The voice asked. That sounds like a great way to get some wedged up in my wheel wells, and I really don't want to hang around this place too long, Alan said. Please, we have women and children in here and these doors aren't really built to withstand the mob that's pushing up against it, the voice pleaded. Alan let out a deep sigh, contemplating the idea as Mabel continued to stare him down from the picture. Do you have people who can fight in there? Alan asked. There's a few of us, and we're armed up pretty good, the voice replied. Okay, I'm going to do a drive-through and take out as many of them as I can. Once I lay on the horn, it's going to be your show, because I'm not getting out of the cab until it's safe, Alan said firmly. Thank you so much. We'll be ready on your signal, the voice responded. You better be. Now get ready, because I'm heading that way shortly, Alan warned. Copy that, the voice said. The voice on the line went silent, leaving Alan alone in the truck with his thoughts. He stared out at the zombies, plotting his course through the parking lot and through them. Before he hit the gas, he looked over to Mabel's photo. All right, Mabel, I'm going to get this done and I'll be home soon. Chapter 8. Alan slammed his foot onto the gas, causing the truck to lurch forward and pick up speed rapidly. By the time he veered to the right to pull into the driveway, he was pushing 40 miles an hour. The big rig jostled around a bit when it crossed over off the road, losing no steam. Alan reached up, grabbed the foghorn and pulled it down, wanting to make sure the zombies knew he had arrived. That's right, come get some, assholes, Alan shouted. He cut the wheel hard to the left as he got close to the front of the lot, wanting to drive right alongside the building. The deafening sound of the horn did its job, pulling the creatures away from the door and into his path. Alan gripped the steering wheel tightly as the front edge of the horde slammed into the grill. Several zombies flew off in either direction from the impact, while others were pulled underneath the truck. The vehicle bounced around violently as the corpses were crushed underneath the weight. Alan got halfway through the horde before concern began to set in at the sound of grinding metal coming from the front driver's side tire. Damn it, Alan shouted. He immediately slammed on the brakes, knowing something was horribly wrong. The tires squealed against the pavement, skidding along as they crushed a few more ghouls before coming to a complete stop. Alan grabbed the radio, angrily barking into it. I've done my part. Now get out here and do yours, Alan yelled. He reached up and pulled down on the horn chain again, keeping it active for what felt like an eternity. He kept checking his mirrors, looking back to the entrance of the gift shop as a handful of men, armed with blunt objects, burst forth to join the battle. Alan watched the other survivors go to work on the creatures, delivering headshots to the back of their skulls with ease while they were distracted by the horn. The trucker reached over, grabbed his coffee, and drank it down while enjoying the show. The entire spectacle took less than 2 minutes before it was over. Alan continued staring into his mirrors, making sure the only things moving were the survivors from the gift shop. Once he got a thumbs up from a younger man with a bloodied baseball bat resting on his shoulder, Alan opened the door, carefully sliding out and landing on the pavement with ease. The younger man began walking toward him, only to be rebuffed by the trucker, whose attention was solely focused on the front end of his truck. "Oh, son of a bitch," Alan cursed. He took a knee beside the front tire, shaking his head at a couple of broken zombie bones sticking out from it. He could hear the air seeping out at a rapid rate. The young man stepped up behind the trucker, getting a look at the situation before speaking. "Is everything okay?" Cody asked. "No, kid, it's not," Alan replied. "My front wheel is messed all up and I'm going to have to change it if I want to get back on the road." "Don't worry, we'll give you a hand getting it changed." Alan turned around to Cody, who looked like he was still in high school. "Jesus, are you even old enough to know how to change a tire?" Alan asked. "Believe it or not, I'm actually 23, Cody said. "My name's Cody, by the way." "That wasn't the question I asked, Cody." The young man could feel the anger simmering just below the surface of the trucker's words. Rather than push the issue, he simply motioned toward the other men who were busy finishing off the crushed zombies scattered around the lot. "I don't have much experience, but a couple of the guys back there do," Cody explained. "They're volunteer firefighters, and their station is just over there across the highway." "Good for them. Would you mind getting them over here to help me out? I have places to be." Cody simply nodded at the surly trucker, turning around and whistling to get the attention of the two firefighters. With a quick hand motion, he brought them over. "How can we help, Cody?" John asked. "John, David, our trucker friend here needs his tire switched out so he can get back on the road." "Sir, if you want to go inside and grab some coffee, we'll take care of this for you," David offered. "If it's all the same to you, I'd rather stay out here and help get it done," Alan replied. "Not a problem. All right, Cody, while we handle this, I want you to run across the street to the station and check on the others who are there." John reached into his pockets, pulling out a set of keys and tossing them over to the young man. "Knocking may not work. A few of those boys are heavy sleepers, so just let yourself in. I'll be right back." Cody turned tail and began running toward the fire station on the other side of the highway. Alan took a quick look, spotting a handful of vehicles parked along the side of the building before his attention was pulled back to his rig. "If your toolbox is unlocked, we'll get this thing switched out for you quick," John said. "Yeah, it's open," Alan replied. "Everything you need is in there." John nodded, motioning for Alan to take a step back to let them get to work. As the two firefighters gathered their tools, Cody continued running across the street, reaching the parking lot of the station in a flash. The young man panted heavily as he stepped up to the front door of the station, digging in his pocket for the keys. While he fumbled around for the correct one, he knocked on the door a few times, not listening for any response, before sliding the key into the deadbolt. With a quick flick of the wrist, the door unlocked and was pushed open. The young Cody didn't have time to scream before a bloodied zombie rushed out of the building, tackling him to the ground. Blood gurgled up into his mouth, choking him as the ghoul ripped the flesh from him. The last image Cody saw was the two zombies running out of the building and heading toward the gift shop. The sound of the electric socket wrench being used on the tire acted as a homing beacon for the creatures. Alan kept a close eye on the two firemen as they worked on replacing his tire, wincing as the noise from the power tool hurt his ears. The trucker perked up at the sound of footsteps coming from behind him as the noise fell silent for a moment. Before he could speak up to warn the others, the deafening noise kicked up again. Alan turned around to see two creatures getting within a few feet of him. He yelled out just as he was tackled, the force of the impact driving him backward into the firemen. John managed to keep his balance, immediately grabbing onto one of the zombies' shirts to pull him off Alan. Despite the fireman's best efforts, he couldn't keep both creatures off the trucker, watching helplessly as the ghoul sunk its teeth into Alan's shoulder. "They're on us," John yelled. David quickly got to his feet, using the powered socket wrench as a weapon, driving the tip into the eye of the creature his partner was holding up. With a squeeze of the trigger, the tool sputtered to life, liquefying the eye and plowing straight into its brain. "Get this thing off of me," Alan shouted. Alan shoved the attacking ghoul upward as much as he could, making its head an easy target for John, who swung his bat hard. The barrel connected with the bridge of the creature's nose, shattering it. The fireman stepped up, delivering one more headshot just to be sure before turning his attention to Alan. The trucker gripped the bite wound tightly, trying to keep the blood from pouring out. "Easy now, man, easy," David said. David tried to keep the trucker down, but Alan wasn't having any of it. He smacked the fireman's arm away, pulling himself up to his feet on his own. He staggered around for a moment, regaining his footing before looking down at the new tire on his rig. "Is that good to go?" Alan asked. "Just about. I have a couple more lug nuts to put on it," John replied. "It's good enough. I'm not going that far," Alan said. "You need to take it easy, man. Let me patch that wound up for you," David urged. Alan let out a frustrated scream before reaching down and grabbing the baseball bat off the ground. He pulled it back as if he was going to strike, forcing the two firemen to step back with their hands up in a non-threatening manner. "It's cool, man. We're not going to stop you," John said. Alan shot death glares at both of the firemen, staring them down as he pulled himself up into the cab of his truck. After slamming the door, he tossed the baseball bat out the window before starting his rig up. Both firemen stepped back away from the truck as it pulled away from the building. Alan glanced in his mirror as he pulled out of the parking lot, noticing the two firemen running back to the safety of the building as the two zombies from the fire station made their way toward them. He chuckled a bit at the sight. "Serves you right," Alan muttered. Alan's gaze fell over to Mabel's photo, getting him to soften a bit while talking to her. "But Mabel, they're the reason I'm late. They're the reason I'm hurt, too," Alan said aloud. His focus continued to switch back and forth between the picture and the road as he talked. "Okay, Mabel, you're right. They don't deserve anything bad. I'm just so damn angry." Alan continued driving north, getting a smile on his face once he saw the Blowing Rock city limits sign. "Home, sweet home. I'm almost there, Mabel." Rather than slow down, Alan pushed the pedal down to the floor without a care in the world. He flew through the southern part of town in a flash, hitting the downtown area, which was a chaotic mess. Alan paid no attention to his surroundings, only focusing on the road ahead with visions of being home with his wife dancing in his head. Before he knew it, he was through the small downtown area and into the neighborhood to the north. Alan spotted the turnoff for his street, but rather than slow down, he cut the steering wheel as hard as he could. With the amount of blood loss he had sustained, the ability to think rationally had gone out the window. Alan let out a yell as his tanker truck jackknifed, toppling over onto its side and skidding across the pavement. His seatbelt kept him strapped in place as all manner of noise erupted around him, metal on pavement mixed with wood snapping in two, before coming to a stop. Alan reached down for his seatbelt but was too weak to unlatch himself. The forceful scent of gasoline filled his nostrils, perking him up just enough to look to his mirrors. Even though the truck was on its side, he could see a river of fuel pouring out into the street, heading straight for a downed power line that was dancing in the intersection. He watched helplessly as the two connected, sparking a fire that grew quickly. Within seconds, the flames stretched out to the tanker portion of his truck. "I'm almost home, Mabel. I'm almost home," Alan whispered. Alan closed his eyes as flames engulfed his truck and everything surrounding it. His last thoughts focused on the wife he hoped he would get to see in the next life. The end.